Welcome to Facing and Center Drilling using a 4-jaw chuck. In this video, you'll explore how to set up the chuck, face your part using a left-handed and right-handed tool, center drilling, and facing the part to length. Facing is one of the most common procedures done on a lathe. Understanding how to use a chuck, center your stock piece, and make your cuts ensures your work is accurate. Setting up for facing using a 4-jaw chuck. Facing is performed on the ends of the part to produce a flat, accurate surface. The workpiece is usually held in a 3, 6, or 4-jaw chuck. In our case, we're using a 4-jaw chuck where each jaw moves independently. Setting this up is simple, but it takes practice. Begin the setup by thoroughly cleaning the mating surfaces of both the spindle and the chuck. It's important to always use a chuck board to protect the bedways whenever you're installing or removing chucks from the lathe. Remember, always tighten the cam locks in a clockwise direction. Place the round stock in the chuck. Starting with the two opposing jaws, use the concentric rings on the chuck face to roughly center the workpiece. Bring in the other two jaws and tighten all four approximately the same amount. Remember, at this point, you're just roughly centering the stock in the chuck. Next, mount the indicator so its spindle touches the workpiece. We use the indicator to exactly center the stock in the chuck. Rotate the chuck and measure the amount the indicator moves. Rotate the workpiece to find the lowest reading. This is where the workpiece is farthest away from the operator. Loosen the jaw closest to the low reading. Rotate the workpiece to find the highest reading. This indicates where the workpiece is closest to the operator. Tighten this jaw as you watch the indicator. Depending on where your lowest reading was, you may need to loosen the opposite jaw first. Rotate the chuck and measure the amount of indicator movement. It should be much less than when you started. Repeat this process by rotating the workpiece to find the lowest reading, loosening the adjacent jaw, finding the highest reading, and tightening that jaw. As you work, you should notice that there are fewer and fewer adjustments necessary. Rotate the chuck. By this point, the amount of indicator movement should be minimal. Repeat these steps until the part is indicated within 5/1000ths of an inch. Then, tighten the chuck jaw that's adjacent to the highest reading. Double-check that all 4 chuck jaws are tight. Facing the part. While a wide variety of tools, tool holders, and spindle directions can be used for facing, a left-hand turning and facing tool works best because it uses the side cutting edge. This means the operator can take heavier cuts and work more easily to a scribed line. This tool cuts from the left to the right, which means the cutting edge is on the right side. Begin by removing the indicator. The part is now centered in the chuck, so it's no longer needed. Mount the tool with the tip at dead center. You can use a center in the tailstock or a tool center gauge to make sure this is placed correctly. Turn the tool to provide clearance for the end cutting edge. This keeps it from dragging across the part's face. Tighten the tool post. Set the proper speeds and feeds on the machine and set the feed direction for facing. Bring the tool tip to the part and set the facing amount. Lock the carriage to keep the tool from traveling away from the part. Start the spindle and engage the feed. Disengage the feed once the tool reaches the center of the part. The part's face should appear flat. If the tool wasn't set to dead center, you'll see some uncut material in the middle of the piece. Center the tool tip to the remaining portion of uncut material and take another facing cut. Setting up a right-hand tool. Facing with a right-hand tool uses the end cutting edge. High-speed cutting tools work best along the side cutting edge, but since facing is typically a light cutting operation, it can be done using the end cutting angle. Just as we did with the left-hand tool, begin by mounting it with the tip at dead center using either a center in the tailstock or a tool center gauge. Turn the tool to provide clearance for the side cutting edge, which prevents it from dragging across the part's face. Tighten the tool post. Set the proper speeds and feeds on the machine and set the feed direction for facing. Bring the tool tip to the part and set the facing amount. Lock the carriage to prevent the tool from traveling away from the part. Start the spindle and engage the feed. Once the tool has finished cutting and is in the center of the part, disengage the feed. The part's face should appear flat. If the tool wasn't set to dead center, some uncut material will remain on the face. Center the tool tip to the remaining portion of uncut material and take another facing cut. Center drilling. Center drilling is used when the workpiece requires centers for support, such as turning between centers or on long, slender workpieces. A center drill is a 60-degree drill that conforms to the 60-degree angle on a lathe center. Center drills are held in a tailstock drill chuck. Begin by placing the drill chuck in the tailstock spindle and tightening the center drill in the chuck. Then, use the witness marks on the end of the tailstock to make sure it's aligned with the headstock. If it's misaligned, the center drill will snap off as soon as it contacts the workpiece. Slide the tailstock toward the workpiece and stop before making contact. Lock the tailstock body down to the bedways. Set the proper spindle speed for center drilling the workpiece and start the spindle. Slowly feed the center drill into the workpiece. It's a best practice to back up the center drill frequently to remove chips. Feed the center drill into the workpiece to a depth equal to 2/3 of the drill's 60-degree angle. Back the drill out and turn the spindle off. Flipping the part. To flip the part, begin by loosening 2 adjacent chuck jaws. It's important to keep track of those jaws' number. This makes it easier to flip the part and then realign it. Measure the part's overall length. Take note of the amount of material you'll need to remove in order to achieve the correct finished length. Place a layout line at the overall finished length. Return the part to the chuck with the faced and centered drilled end in the chuck. Tighten the same 2 jaws that were loosened earlier. Mount the indicator so the spindle touches the workpiece. Rotate the chuck. Indicate the piece the same way as earlier. Indicating the part should be quicker this time because we're loosening and tightening the same 2 jaws. Facing the part to length. If the lathe you're using doesn't have a digital readout, loosen the compound slides bolts and adjust it until it's parallel with the bedways. The angular reading on the compound should be 0. Bring down the tool tip until it just touches the end of the workpiece. Take facing cuts that remove no more than 20 to 30 thousandths of an inch per pass. Use the dial on the compound slide for measurement purposes. Continue removing material from the face until you've reached the required finished length. If the lathe has a digital readout, lower the tool tip until it's just touching the end of the workpiece and set the Z-axis readout to 0. Move the carriage and use the digital readout for measurement purposes. Take facing cuts of no more than 20 to 30 thousandths of an inch per pass. Continue removing material from the face until you've reached the required finished length. Once you've reached the desired finished length, center drill this end if it's required. Conclusion. Today we've covered how to set up a 4-jaw chuck, how to face your stock piece, and how to center drill each end. You'll need to use one or all of these operations every time you make a part on the lathe. Understanding how to successfully perform these operations is essential to operating an engine lathe. You've completed facing and center drilling using a 4-jaw chuck.